Greetings, brave adventurers. Welcome back. It is I, Eric's UK, with another vid. Finally doing a catch up on my Pathfinder campaign, Chaos and Limbo. It's been a bit of a while again, because once again the players have been in a situation where pretty much they were in the leading the charge, shall we say. Not quite as sandboxy as they had previously, but close enough. So where we left off, the player of Figgy was away for a week or so. And the guys still wanted to play, so I decided to do a standalone scenario almost sort of thing. And I asked what they would like to do, and the player of the new character, Harrock, who is a very anti-wizard blood rager, was, I want to kill evil wizards. So, hey, who am I to say no to an insane blood rager? And so, at this particular session, I had the characters approached by a villager, townsfolk person, who had come from a little village several miles outside of Darakeen, looking for help. Apparently some evil wizard had set up a tower magically almost overnight and was basically terrorizing their village. And they wanted rid of him. The town watch and whatnot, the militia, are far too occupied dealing with the current influx of refugees, so they've come looking for help. And the characters obviously go, evil wizard, let's keep the blood rager happy, let's go deal with it. And they get to this village, and it's very subdued, people are quite scared, and there is this marvellous magical style tower. And talking to people, they say, well, there's this hideous creature that comes out, abducts people, and basically drags them off to their doom or whatever fate awaits them within the tower. And so the party basically shoulders their stuff, they break into the tower, and we basically have a session of dungeon crawling. I picked a handful of creatures, and basically reskinned them a little bit so that the players wouldn't know what was what. And while I was going through it, I had a sudden sort of like change of heart almost, because I really wanted something now that was pushing the story. If you remember from other vids, I was having a little bit of trouble kind of pushing it forwards, because I didn't want to give too much away, but at the same point, I'm kind of like, you guys are sort of like nearly 8th level now, and nearly 9th, I should say, and you should be getting somewhere. I can't just be holding back. You guys have got to get somewhere. So I decided that the evil red-robed dungeon dragon cultist type guy that they've been encountering was maybe not behind this, but was certainly involved. So they fight their way through some of these monsters, they find some treasure, and then they enter a room that is guarded, sort of, by a banshee. And knowing how nasty these are, I thought, like, let's see whether they've learnt their lesson from the clay golem incident a few months back. And do they avoid it? Do they? No. Of course they don't. And they basically antagonize it to an extent. They start encroaching on where it is, and it basically just comes out. Somebody tries to attack it, and it screams. And all but one of the party fall down. And I went, I'm not having this. It's a powerful beastie. It's only a side quest, and it's not entirely real. Well, I'll come to that. So I basically said, right, you are all on your minus negative but you are stable. So you're not bleeding, you're not dying, but you are out for the count. And I can't remember off the life of me now which character was still standing. I want to say the paladin. It might have been the cleric. This is a couple of months ago now. And he was able to basically, whichever one it was able to basically put this thing down and revive his friends. I'm sure it was a paladin, because he then gets the cleric up, and the cleric then starts channeling and bringing people back. And then we ended up with this scene where there's these huge doors they're trying to get through, and the evil wizard they're looking for is on this balcony, chortling and cackling away. And while they're sort of like trying to get up to him, the doors open and some horrific monster comes through, which they manage to defeat. They also managed to slay the wizard. I think he basically took a number of magic effects to the face, cried out, "But my lord, I've done everything I've asked of you," sort of thing, before collapsing dead. And the characters try and peer through this door this monster's coming from and just find this starry void, this realm with beyond realms sort of thing behind it, which kind of weirds them out a little bit, which I was a little bit surprised at. And then I have the evil cultist type guy, the dungeon dragon, pop up, and to my surprise, they don't actively try and spud him. They start a dialogue, which I was not expecting. And he basically says, "Have you lot," in a nutshell, basically says, "Have you lot stopped faffing about with demons in Darrakeen? You're actually going to get on with the plot, the message that I've set you on here. I didn't pick you guys for the fun of it." And he basically sort of explains that this primordial, this ancient entity of chaos and limbo is trying to come back into the real world and basically try and flood the mortal realm with the very chaotic, entropic stuff that created the multiverse in the first place, and basically undo creation almost and make it this big swirly mess. And says you will find clues, but he points them in the direction of Figgy and basically says your friend has secrets he hasn't told you, things that are relevant, things that you need to get out of him, because if you don't, the world's going to end and I won't be happy, sort of thing. And it all kind of ends really nicely. I was a little bit surprised. Next thing you know, the characters are waking up. There's no sign of the tower. They're in a field outside a ruined village. It looks like no one's lived there for decades. Walking along the road is their friend Figgy heading back to Darrakeen. And that's basically the end of that particular session. Because I thought, okay, Figgy, the player of Figgy, has given me this huge background, which I've spoken of before. Let's get some use out of it now. Let's throw something of the player's creation in there. So the next session, they basically sit him down and go, "Look, you've not been particularly honest with us. We know something's going on. What is it?" And rather than try and fight it like I almost expected, the player of Figgy basically goes, with everything that's going on, yeah, that's where I've been. And he explains his background, where he used to be a member of an elite, is that sort of the word? Unit, force, whatever, in the nation city of Manzikar, which is where all these refugees have been coming from, mentioned in the last couple episodes. And he's been to speak with his former superior. Has a name, but I can't remember it off the top of my head as I'm doing this vid. And basically explains that some sort of evil force has taken over Manzikar, these grey cloaks, who seem to have come out of nowhere and have basically taken over the city council and slowly worm their way into the military and the militia and other things. And basically his former commander has basically said, look, you left for a reason. Basically he was framed by a couple of nefarious types in his own unit for rape and pillage and murder, and he'd basically fled because who's going to listen to him, but his commander needs his help if we're going to retake Manzikar from these Greycloaks. Now, the other players, or their characters, don't really know what's going on, but it's obviously got something to do with their plot. Otherwise, the big cultist Dungeon Dragon guy wouldn't be trying to chase them up for it. So they agree to go back with him. They go back to the city. They tool up on stuff and they head back. They speak to some refugees fleeing, who basically say that the power behind the throne, as it were, now the militia have released these juggernauts out into the wild. These giant rolling constructs with giant, sort of dozer blade roller things, and anything that isn't one of their own, they basically smush them, trying to basically stop people leaving. If you're too scared of what's out there, you won't leave the city. You'll stay, contained. And when the party get to where Figgy's friends or his former comrades are staying, basically they find that they are being attacked by a juggernaut, and they come to the rescue. And they manage to destroy this thing and basically find out what's going on. And basically, the Greycloaks, or these strange figures that sort of like turned up a couple of years ago, they just look like people in cloaks. But over time, more and more of them began to appear, and slowly people began to act differently. And Figgy's former commander thinks that maybe they're exerting some sort of magical control over people. And basically, they sit down for a bit and try and come up with a plan. Now, thankfully, Figgy's player, because this is all his idea basically, has come up with a really nice hand-drawn map of the city and the surrounding area, and he sat there for ages going on in character about what the various districts were, ways into the city, ways out, blah, 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 and it was great. I actually felt, I was a little bit worried originally that he'd given me too much information, we wouldn't be able to use it, but he was able to put it to rights. Now, at this point, we had the character of Alexander in the party, who was a kineticist, and his player has basically come to the conclusion, and rightfully so, that kineticists as a class is broken. It's dumb. It's absolutely stupid. So he has agreed off his own back suggestion to drop that character and take another one, because he felt it was too strong, and he wasn't wrong. And instead, he is now playing a kobold druid, which is really cool. Slightly underpowered compared to everybody else, but really cool. So we leave Alexander behind to help, and this new character, Zanak, Zanak, always makes me think of a medical tablet or something, joins them instead. And basically they come up with this idea of getting a rowboat from a nearby village, which took a lot of role-playing, because they really were fluffing these diplomacy checks to try and make friends with the villagers who thought they were basically members of the Manzikar militia. But eventually, with a hefty amount of gold and stuff, just to buy a rowboat and hire the services of one guy to row it out for them, they row out to the base of the cliffs. They sneak past the various ships in the harbour, and they climb the cliff walls. They airwalk up the cliff walls, using them as cover, and attempt to get into the citadel, which is where the council chambers are. Figgy tries to blag his way through the guards, saying he needs to be let in to speak to the council, and he's told no, because you haven't got any paperwork. I don't need paperwork. Yes, you do. No paperwork, no coming through. No amount of diplomacy was going to get past this because they were all rolling really, really badly. So in the end, they came up with the idea of going around the corner and trying to climb up to a window and get in, which they do. And sneaking around, they find like this central staircase which overlooks the main entrance, and there's these 6 guards standing there, equally distant around. And they're quite stealthy, and they try this really crazy idea of trying to latch a rope to the balcony above and climb up the rope, which was great until the cleric attempts to do it. Clerics not known for their stealthiness nor their climb skill. And he makes an awful racket, his armour clanking, and these 6 figures look up to reveal they're gaunt, sort of emaciated, their eyes are sunken pits, and they just start howling. They don't do anything, they're just sort of like controlled. I should point out, just before this, the Rex, the party sorcerer, attempts to detect thought spell from these guys and picks up basically thousands upon thousands of thoughts, which makes them come to the conclusion that whatever this is going on is some sort of hive mind, and it's connecting them all together, and they're reading the thoughts of everyone. So what one individual knows, they all know. Anyway, and that's where we ended that particular session. Next session, the guards from outside come bundling in, and we have this massive fight, which is over quite quickly, really. And they spud these guys, and they basically chop down these wailing figures. They're obviously not quite in there anymore, so they just finish them off to stop anything. And they make their way up to the council chambers, fight a few more guards sort of thing on the way. And when they burst in, they find these 3 giant grey-cloaked figures standing around. It's kind of like almost like I'm going to say amphitheatre. It's not the right words, but basically a series of circular steps, and the various councilmen would have stood on these. And the closer you were to the middle, the more important you were. But these giant figures are all connected by these giant rubbery tentacles that are stretching out from underneath them. And there is now this gaping hole in the middle of the amphitheatre floor, from which smoke and a little bit of sparks occasionally emanate. And basically what I did here was I used the stats for a roper, but it was all 3 creatures were the same creature. I had the idea that they would split up and try and deal with it, but they didn't. They went for one, and in taking that down, the whole lot, all 3 went down. So I was quite pleased with that. It was a tough fight. Some stats were drained and things like that. And as they slew this one, the last one sort of crumbled, growled something about you cannot stop our grand plan now, blah blah blah, and then basically melts its way down this hole in the floor. A guard bursts in, freed now from whatever this hive mind was, and basically, when he calms down, explains that the extinct volcano beneath them, which was in Figgy's character's player's backstory, has been not reignited, but these creatures, whatever they were, have opened a portal to their home realm, which the party know as Limbo. And the energies are basically seething magma. So there's various earth shocks and tremors and things like this been going on. And one thing that this particular guard remembers as these various memories fade is that the Grey Cloaks have set up some sort of artifact on the other side of this portal, and that's what's keeping the portal open. And if it's not sealed, it's going to basically flood Limbo out into the real world. It's not in any immediate danger, so they do rest up for the night. They do help injured and wounded townsfolk and people who are confused after being controlled for so long. And then basically they gather their various spells and the like, and they head down this volcano, great flooded chamber, and there's this glowing portal on the other side. And they pass through. So basically we had, that's over a couple of sessions. And now we've had 2 sessions where they've gone through the portal. And basically they have a series, basically to cut it short, because this video is running long now, there's a series of islands, pockets of stable matter, and they have a few strange encounters with things, little guardian beasties, fleshy balls with limbs and so forth. An island of, well, with like this big burning obelisk with an eye in the middle of it, which they name Oki, because, or something like that, because it's got an oculus, an eye, and it's able to talk to them. And it's basically bored because in a plane of utter chaos and change, it's been stuck on an island of solidity and law almost for millennia, and it wants to go somewhere else. And they basically agree to carry it with them and plant it somewhere else on Limbo. And in exchange, it rewards them with this treasure that was under its feet the whole time. And they find this chest of holding with a load of stuff in it, because they're a little bit behind. Well, I say a little bit, they are behind on their treasure quota, and I want them to get up on that now. So they got some nice gear out of this. They encounter a few more beasties on the way, including some strange sort of tunnel that seems to go under the molten fluid of creation here, to another island where there are fleshy trees that look like arms with hands as branches and then fingers as twigs. And then someone came up with a really cool idea of when the wind blows, instead of it being like a field of blossom that drifts away, it's fingernails. And I love that image. I thought that was really, really cool. And they defeat the sort of guardian thing that's here. They find another chest of holding in its lair and some more treasure, which is good. And then we find this object of stability, this keep. And they're really confuzzled by this. And someone makes the point of it's the drawbridge opens and it's a mouth. I'm out of here, sort of thing. And I thought that's really cool, and that's better than what I thought. So sure enough, when they managed to smack this thing and find that it bleeds, they did enough damage that it opened its mouth to try and stop them, and they walk into the throat of this fleshy keep. Long story short, they have a few monster encounters, and they eventually find a kind of library, I suppose, where they find out that this primordial being has contacted in the past 3 wizards, and they've been gifted the knowledge to create these portals and given one of these artifacts each. One of them is here. One of them, they learn, has gone to Garnet, which is where they started off, and there's no mention of the other one yet. One of the things that the paladin found in one of the boxes was a holy weapon, which is all carved with symbols of some sort of angel of Gorum, his deity. And he's like, I wonder who this belonged to. A weapon like this should have a background. So I put in this background about this little cult group being discovered by Sarathiel, I think the name was I gave it. And over centuries, Sarathiel tried to defeat the cult, only to be eventually slain here on Limbo. And his weapon was hidden. And he's now got this, and it's a sort of a legacy weapon. So as he levels, it will gain abilities. And they get the chamber with this crystal. And I can't remember who did it now, but I think the cleric went to grab it and sort of shut it down, and it started to have an unnatural effect on him. He started bleeding from his eyes, and his fingertips were melting and stuff like this. I think the sorcerer, I think Rex, goes up and manages to channel his mind into it and shuts the thing down. And then they have this, hang on, if we've just shut this down, how do we get back from Limbo? Dun, dun, dun. So that's where we ended it. So we've actually got quite a bit done, and I'm really pleased with how it's going now. I feel like we're getting somewhere. I feel that they're learning something, and I've come to the conclusion I was going to drag this campaign out to sort of like 20th level, but I've decided no, I think we're going to give it another 6 levels, We'll wrap up about 16th, similar to how the official adventure paths do. And then, we've got another campaign waiting to go. Return of the Rune Lords? Anyway, so they've got a little bit more information. So when they work out how they're getting back from Limbo, they've got to find the other crystal beneath Garnet and then find out where the other crystal is, the third one, and then they need to try and stop this primordial. So we shall see what happens. And that's where we're up to. I know it's a big stream of consciousness sort of, of words. But it felt like I needed to wait until they got where they were before I said anything else. So that's where we're up to. Hopefully, you've enjoyed my waffling. If so, please give me a thumbs up and a like, and hit the subscribe button because it'll help the channel out. Any comments, queries, whatever, drop them down below. I would be interested to hear your thoughts. Until next time, which will probably be a couple of weeks, I'll try and get these a bit more frequent. Until then, take care, guys, and good gaming.